Your Excellencies, the President, Ministers, Ambassadors, all friends of NIB. Warm welcome to our event, which is marking 20 years of Baltic membership in the Nordic Investment Bank. I must say that I'm still a little bit touched about this performance. I don't know if there are any Estonians who know what this song was all about. This song is originally performed by a progressive rock band called Ruja. And the song is called Teisel pool vett, on the other side of the water. And it was performed to us by Future Cello. And this was actually a special arrangement made for this occasion. This song, Teisel pool vett, it's about distance, it's about longing, it's about separation. It is, of course, about relationships. But actually, when I listen to the lyrics in particular, it also could be about the Baltic countries. It could be about the Baltic countries before regaining independence. when these countries were not allowed to be with the closest neighbors freely in the West, and in particular with the countries from the Nordics. We all know that then, 2004, the Baltic countries joined the European Union, the NATO, and then 2005, what is less known is that they also joined the Nordic Investment Bank. And this is what we are going to celebrate today. My name is Jukka Ahonen, and I will be moderating this session until the break. And the first session, which will start quite soon, will be more looking at the big picture, what has been the developments in the Baltics during the last 20 years. The second session will be moderated after the break by my colleague, Akvile Skiparie, and that will be more going down to business. The topic is basically related how to balance the environment, economic development, as well as security. When we were doing some research that who should be the speaker, who should give the welcoming address for this opening, actually we got one name immediately, and that came from all corners. And that person was the finance minister at the time, and we are really lucky and honored to have her here. So I would like to welcome the President, Dalia Grybauskaitė, to take the floor for opening words.
It is not only 20 years, but my first interconnection with NIB appeared more than 30 years. In the beginning of the 90s, I was working in Ministry of Foreign Affairs in the Economic Department, and we already at that time started to negotiate with NIB some projects for Lithuania. The Nordic countries have been the first here. They opened first their embassies, and they came with support the first. And this history just finalized in our membership from 2005 by all three Baltic states and Nordic countries. And I have very much personal touch with this and personal reasoning. Finally, after some years in office, you realize that a lot of things are personal. Then I was working in the United States in my youth as a diplomat. I met with Aldous Kissinger, and he said to me at that time, and we were in the 95, 99, only thinking and dreaming about becoming the members of European Union, for example, that only via Nordic countries we will become members, that only Nordic countries will help us as much without any calculation to be what we want to be. And this left a huge impression for me personally, and it was the red line, some kind of line what I was all the time remembering and following. So why it is very natural that from beginning of 90s, who first came here with all assistance, economic, humanitarian even, medical assistance, it was Nordic countries. So why today, looking into our membership in NIB and the projects we are performing together, it is very clear that you have been where we mostly needed. It is our energy security, it is our prosperity, and you followed with us the most important strategic decisions we made. And today you signed another very important strategic decision we're making, increasing our defense and security directly of our country in these geopolitical times. And the investments and 400 million you signed today, it is a symbolic but very important step. And I hope that this relevance of the bank in Baltic region will follow, that you will increase your attention to our defense needs, not necessarily building weapons of mass destruction, but defense and helping us to secure ourselves more. And this is about the bank, because you always listened what we need. You always followed us in better or worse times. And I want to thank you very much that We were learning from you, and we were living with you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, President, for these welcoming words. A couple of questions, and I can start with the first ones. So, if you look at the 20 years, if you look at back 20 years, where do you see that the Baltic countries have achieved most?
You know, because the audience knows what we achieved. You know, they know. I think that we can say only two main things, or three. The first, in 20 years, if to look purely economically, we achieved a huge economic prosperity and standard of living. Our GDP, by figures, almost rose 4 times, and this is a huge achievement. Now we are about 90% of European average. And this was practically only dream for us, especially then we compare our country with the neighbors from our ex-Soviet times. You see the difference almost about 30 years in development. The second, I will say that the most important what we did exactly during these 20 years is our economic independence. Starting from LNG terminal, cutting absolutely 100% ties from Gazprom, which was so risky, so difficult morally to accept, and to have the courage to do it, up to synchronization, which we made very recently, and everywhere your bank was following, starting with the help financially to start LNG terminal, now to buy LNG terminal, and with all other projects of synchronization also. So I think these are main strategic decisions which made our country not only economically flexible, independent, but also politically independent, because we cut all ties of economic or energy influence to our political life, and we cut all possibilities for political corruptions by other countries. And this, I think, strategic and the most important achievements we had.
So economic growth and independence, both kind of energy and also politically. What about, it's the NIB's 20 years anniversary of the Baltics. Then the question is, what should be on NIB's agenda for the next 20 years?
No, I don't like even 5 years planning from my previous life. No, but yeah, strategically we need to think, to plan a little bit shorter. Then we were going for LNG terminal. Nobody was saying and thinking that it is so strategic decision. Then the crisis occurred in 22, economic crisis. We realized how strategic we have been. So in reality, you take what you need to do to have courage and fast, and then only time will say how much strategic it was. It is very difficult. But what I want to just wish for the bank to stay relevant as you are with all needs of our region, and you do this, including now defense and security, which is upcoming and will be on agenda for a long time. And I think you started with this decision in 24, now increasing your participation, and I hope you will be in future also very much involved into this, our very much important challenge we are facing today. So from this point of view, your life as banks related with all our 8 countries' life, and you all the time timely supporting us with our decisions, what we have. And this is very good, and I hope that we will be able to have this efficiency and efficient cooperation we had until now. And I am very happy that with Nordic countries, Lithuania and Baltic states, we were able to be close not only politically in economic areas in the European Union, in NATO, but also in Nordic Investment Bank.
All right, thank you. And now there is a unique opportunity to ask questions. Hands up.
Any kind of questions?
There is at least one question.
Hi, from the board of the Nordic Investment Bank side. 20 years ago, it was a long time ago when Baltic countries joined NIB, and I understood you were part of the negotiations or the team who were joining. At that time as well, Baltic countries joined the EU and NATO. In retrospect, how do you remember joining the bank? What were the main challenges, or what's your memories?
I remember more as challenged the relations the middle of 90s, 93, 94. Then we only started to negotiate because nobody in Lithuania knew how negotiations look like and treaties about programs look like. We were learning from you, from your people, from negotiators, by doing. That left largest impressions. From 2000 and 2005, then we started to talk about already membership. We were already matured. We were self-confident. We learned a lot because during this time we negotiated all treaties possible, including myself, with Nordic countries, as investment treaty, avoidance of double taxation. So we already knew how it looks like, and we just wanted to formalize our relations and to, to little bit to press bank to change its identity, because it was only Nordic investment bank, but not Nordic-Baltic. And it was more political, I will say, symbolism. But anyway, because we worked with Nordic Investment Bank already from beginning of 90s. You have been here, but politically, to have new entity, it was political importance to go with other memberships which we had in 2004.
All right, thank you very much. Are there any other possible questions?
Okay, if not, I'm sorry, I will disappear because I need to fly to Germany today. And I postponed my flight to the late flight because of this event I promised to be.
And
so.
Thank you very much for that. Thanks a lot for joining.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you. All right, thank you. And now we will kick off the first panel discussion. And this is a little bit inspired by this Beatles song, Now and Then. So we actually will start with now. So we are going to discuss how the situation was 20 years ago when the Baltics joined NIB, and then we also think about what the situation is now. But we are also going to touch upon in between and also about the future. And for this panel, we have an excellent lineup. And the first speaker I would like to invite to take the floor is Jonni Åkerholm, who was the president when the Baltics joined the bank. And the second panelist is our own governor, finance minister of Lithuania, Rimantas Šadžius. And then we have Keit-Pentus-Rosimannus, who is a member of the European Court of Auditors. So please take the floor. All right. So we are all here, so we can start. And we can start with Jonni Åkerholm. We can start with a very Finnish phrase, like no need. So when you joined the bank, Jonni Åkerholm, the Baltic countries had just become members. How did that impact the bank, its culture and its activities?
Well, thank you. Thank you, first of all, for the invitation. It's very nice to be here and also to see that so many people have lined up to this event, which I think is worth celebrating. Well, as you said, I joined the NIB almost at the same day as the Baltic countries, and of course the first visible change was that the working language in NIB changed. I think staff was very good at English, so that was not a problem. I think many were relieved not to have to be listening to the Danes. There was one small problem, though. As in all international organizations, new ideas were frequently presented in the terms of memoranda, which in Swedish the abbreviation of is PM. Now, you know, in English, PM is post-mortem. And many new ideas were presented under the form of post-mortem for quite some long time. But it was something we overcame. But most seriously, of course, the visible thing that also happened was that non-member lending became ordinary lending to a member country, and the Baltic countries could see that they were treated in the same way as the Nordic countries in its lending. And I think it was important because I remember that during one of my first discussions with the Baltic representatives, I was told that, well, actually, we have already graduated from the development banks. Now, this, of course, showed that NIB was not actually a development bank. NIB had a different mandate, and I think it was important also that the members were represented in the decision-making process and could answer questions. They could give more information about the projects, and the whole attitude towards lending to the Baltic region changed as a result of this. But the most important thing that happened was that times had changed when NIB was founded. The major challenge was the availability of finance. That was a time of regulation, and NIB was founded in order to raise money for big investments in the Nordic area. That time had gone. And the next question was, what is the NIB contribution in this time? And when the Baltic countries joined, a new strategy process was initiated, and I would dare to say that the Baltic representatives played a very active role in this process because they came in with new eyes, new ideas, new thoughts about what would be needed. And I would really like to pay tribute to their contribution to the process, which in the end ended up noticing that NIB should A, focus on long-term financing, and B, promote investments in the environmental field, and in order to support competitiveness, which I think is in these days minted as supporting productivity, which no doubt is a better term, more practical term to identify these targets. Now, I think that the process showed it gave the Baltic countries a very speedy, sort of a short way to come into the work of the NIB. And I also think that it was not only that the Baltic countries' representatives got something. In fact, I think at that very early stage, they also contributed quite heavily to the process, the development of the NIB, both in terms of targets, functioning, and activity.
Maybe a little bit on the same topic, I could ask the minister that we heard, of course we know that there was the EU membership 2004 and the NATO membership. How important was this Nordic kind of angle?
Well, let's start probably from something that in the audience probably not very many people recall. I still recall. I also got some experience of living in the previous system. And this previous system, the Swedish example of way of living, of standards of living, was something that guided us towards our future, or the future that we understood that we would wish to. So, in fact, it was just Swedish example. I ask not to complain the representatives of other 4 Nordic countries that were in the Nordic Investment Bank. It was something in very general terms, the Nordic idea that guided, I think, all 3 Baltic countries towards towards the economic, first of all, economic progress, but also towards higher social standards. And this was in our hearts all the way long. And what happened indeed was a huge transformation. Huge transformation with the pace that is rarely seen in the world, I think. There are few examples, such big changes in one region during such a short time. If we say, look at the last 20 years when we became the members of Nordic Investment Bank till today, these 20 years were also full of events. And this is not only joining 3 Baltic states, joining NATO, and then Finland and Sweden joining NATO, by the way. Not only us joining the European Union, Eurozone. There was a huge financial crisis in 2008, 2009. I think people already write textbooks on this. After that, immediately came the Eurozone crisis, a Greek saga, of which myself, I was also a participant, live participant. It were huge challenges. There was not enough of events because then COVID came. Then war came, and the war came in 2014. It was already a push back for the economy, for Lithuanian economy for sure. We evaded only slightly our depression, the recession of the Lithuanian economy in 2015. Still we evaded. But it was a push. In 2022, well, situation again changed. And of course, when talking about Nordic Investment Bank, its role in these transformations, of course I can praise the role of this institution, but probably more important is to say that Nordic-Baltic cooperation, Nordic-Baltic feeling us as one geopolitical region, not only Nordic, not only Baltic, but all together, was something that kept us on this very high pace of development. And it still holds. Nordic-Baltic constituency, say in the International Monetary Fund or in the World Bank, is the only constituency made of several countries that is geopolitically motivated, that has single agenda, and it has single agenda not because some big country, say Sweden or Finland, would impose on others, but because we all together elaborated. But the bank, here is the bank. Mindset also transformed in our countries. This was a very important element in the transformation of Baltic countries. One of the elements that we understood was formulated by the president of another multilateral bank. I will not tell which, but probably some people here in the audience could have heard that. It was in Vilnius. He said, well, it was a multilateral bank, public multilateral bank. Believe it or not, we are a bank and we want our money back. And the understanding that money costs, that things that are around us are not free of charge, is something that I think guided us in the right direction in arranging our life. Take water or fresh air. We understood how precious it is, because you have to borrow money, to spend it, to clean, and then to return back. For that, you should earn that money. How precious energy is. And here came another very important story. There was a lot of cheap energy around. And we managed finally to understand that this is a Trojan horse. It is a Trojan horse. This cheap Russian gas is simply a Trojan horse. Same cheap Russian electricity is a Trojan horse. So it was absolutely a conscious choice of us to establish our energy independence in terms of gas first, then in terms of electricity. NIB was there. NIB was there when we were building liquid natural gas terminal in Klaipėda, which up to now, if not counting Rūdninkai campus, was the biggest ever investment project in Lithuania. And NIB was there. And NIB was everywhere also, in municipalities, in small projects. It was also there in electrifying transport, in cleaning environment, in improving energy efficiency of our buildings, which is still a persistent problem in Lithuania. So now, sustainability challenges. I thought, okay, sustainability challenges, but all they are anthropogenic. All they are anthropogenic. And the biggest one, sustainability challenge, our security issues, they are also anthropogenic. To fight with anthropogenic challenges, you need people. You need people, but you need money, you need energy, you need enthusiasm, and this is what NIB manages to bring together in the projects that we undertake. And today's signing of the agreement on 400 million of financial loan to the Lithuanian Treasury, designed to finance defense needs without any, language about dual use or whatever, defense needs. This is a milestone for Lithuania because it is the first, not the first, but the big result of that kind of our financial diplomacy. And for NIB, this is also the first project of that kind. So it is also a milestone. And I think we are on the same page today. We are equally enthusiastic. Of course, we can congratulate ourselves with 20th anniversary and then wait for December to congratulate NIB for 50th anniversary. Yeah. But I think we should look forward. We should look into the future.
Thank you very much. You covered actually all the history already, 20 years. Thank you for that. But I think we could go back in time, maybe 20 years still, and I would like to ask Keit-Pentus-Rosimannus that how did the world look from the Estonian point of view in 2005?
Well, 2005, of course, and the years that follow, I would say that were the years of extremely rapid development overall. And I think that if I would have to characterize the overall feeling at the time, is fair to say that we had a sort of constant hunger to succeed, to improve. And when at the time we thought about the whole region, the Nordic region as well, that clearly the Nordic countries were sort of a model for Estonia as well. But I would say that there were some strings attached in a sense that we wanted to have a life quality of Nordic countries, other Nordic countries. And we definitely wanted to have the service level of the Nordics, but we still wanted to have and keep the tax level of our own. And I think that it's fair to say that there was a wide understanding of the need to keep the legal environment as business-friendly as possible, to keep the bureaucracy low. But there was it sort of came also from the situation we were in, because we clearly understood that because of the size of the country, it would be impossible for us to have a quite extensive public sector, which means that if we wanted to have the highest service level, we had to find smarter ways to have the service level up, the public service level, and that was a necessary push to develop the digital sector as well. And since the environment part was already mentioned, I think I would bring out the digital services and the overall digital development that was also in the radar for the NIB. So I think this has also definitely been important part. And if I think not just for 2005, but let's say 2005 from 2005 till 2012, then during those years, not only the very quick development happened, Estonia fell under the first very wide cyber attack as well, and that happened 2007. And I think it also characterizes the mentality, the constant will to turn our weaknesses into strength. And again, I would say that partly because of that it happened. We managed to build out a really resilient security or cybersecurity domain, which of course we know now that has not only paid off, but has turned out to be a crucial thing, definitely not only for Estonia or not even only for the Baltic states, but the wider region and actually for the whole EU. So yes, I think the fact that NIB was there for the strategic sectors, for sure, was well recognized and appreciated.
Thank you. Actually, you mentioned something quite interesting. I think it was like we need to have maybe a small discussion about it. You said that Estonia was very hungry for development, and then the Nordic model was something that would be appreciated, but not with high taxes. So maybe, Jonni Åkerholm, how do you see this? You are an economist, long career, central bank in the finance ministry. What is a Nordic model without high tax rates?
I remember this, in fact, very well, because I think at that stage when the Baltic countries were liberated, I was at the central bank. And there was in the Nordic countries, in Nordic cooperation, a very strong will to support the Baltic countries in different respects. And we wanted to do that together, and we wanted to do it separately. And I remember one of the first comments we got, yes, we would like to have your support, but we don't want to have your taxes. So I mentioned that one. Now, the interesting thing, this is a debate, what the contribution of taxes is to development, how much is it a support or is it a hinder? I think there is no clear answer to that. If you look at the Nordic countries, for example, look at Denmark for the time being, which has the highest tax rate among the Nordic countries, but it has also had the highest growth rate in the last few years. In Finland, again, we have a little bit lower tax rates and we have no growth. So I don't think that there is a direct connection. I think when you think about taxes and you think about what do you need them for, it depends how you use your money. If you use the money for consumption, or if you use the money for education, for supporting structural change, social change, innovation, and so forth, then it might not be a big problem to have, to a certain extent, higher taxes. And one should also remember, of course, that much of in all countries, including Finland, much of the change in the social structure of the economy has been founded on the basis of quite high taxes. And it is something which for at least a long time contributed to the growth and the transformation of the economy that we have seen. So there is no real, I don't think there is any clear-cut answer. It depends on how you use your money.
Yeah. Would the minister like to comment?
I'm this guilty guy who proposed just recently in Lithuania to raise some taxes, of course, and got a lot of criticism. But I completely agree with Johnny that there is probably no direct correlation between the level of taxes and, so to say, way of living. There are many things that should be done by applying your intellect, by applying your enthusiasm, and by applying the means borrowed from reliable sources like NIB is. So investment projects in the energy sector, I think, is one of the examples where we can get long-term benefits for everybody. Decreasing use, decreasing consumption of energy in the area where you don't need it so much, and leaving this energy produced by your facilities in your country for feeding the manufacturing of the things that you need, be it some consumption goods or nowadays, unfortunately, some weaponry, is a way to improve living. I'm envious about the Finnish education system. I think that in the education system, of course, Lithuania, my country, has to do much more than is done, but probably not in terms of pouring money there. But putting more order there. And this is another example where we can learn from other countries, from Nordic countries, how they have arranged these systems that not only perfectly function, but also are renowned for their quality all over the world. And this is about Finnish education system. So these are things, these are examples from which we can learn. And spending money wisely. There are things that we theoretically know. For example, we know that public investment is something that makes economy much healthier. Unfortunately, public investment is the first article in your spending list which suffers when hard time comes. And this is 2009 in Lithuania. Public investment and culture and defense sector suffered first because we had to retain the payments of pensions, of social benefits and salaries in the public sector. It's quite natural. It happens all over the world. But in better times, I don't say in good times, probably no Minister of Finance would tell that the times he's living in are good. Probably better, and I think in Lithuania we have this better times. We have to think thoroughly where to spend. And this creativity in spending, creativity in investment is something that we can also learn from experience of the multilateral banks like NIB, which finances projects already not only the region but also outside the region, and can measure in real KPIs what works, what doesn't. So this is another good that we can get free of charge from our own bag, which is now NIB.
All right. Maybe we go back a little bit to the expectations that were there 2005. And maybe Jonni Åkerholm, you were the president at the time, and then you have been, of course, followed the development afterwards as well. Do you think that some of these expectations that were mentioned have been fulfilled? What are the main achievements by the Baltic countries?
Well, I would say a few personal reflections. Some things I think were expected, some were hoped for, and we had some positive surprises, and we have perhaps also some disappointments. Now, something which was expected and which clearly happened was the catch-up. It is clear that there has been, as the President said, a huge narrowing of the gap in living standards, and of course, I looked at the figures, and Lithuania is the star performer in this respect because in real terms, your real income per capita has increased, according to World Bank statistics, by more than 100% since 2004, which is a very strong development. Now, something that we hoped for, especially in NIB, was that the investments, the loans placed in Baltic countries would make a major change to the infrastructure. And I think in this respect, NIB has been able to make a contribution both to the energy sector, to communications, and to many other sectors which are important at the time, but of course also for future growth. And that was a wish which was more or less fulfilled. Now, something which was a positive surprise was the development in the digital economy. I think this is something which, in many respects, our own countries has something to learn from. And Finland, we many times think that we are very good at this. It is something which comes from the Nokia time. In fact, we are not at all that good. But in many respects, we could in fact look at, and we are following and looking at what especially Estonia did. And I think this was a positive contribution which we could not really foresee. Another thing, which is of course not directly felt, but which impressed me, is how Baltic representatives have been able to fare internationally. You have been able to play important roles in international fora. This is not a contribution of NIB, but I have noticed that many of your high representatives in different places have at some stage in their early career been in NIB bodies. So, you know, many by name and many by personally of them. Now, some disappointments. What I had hoped for during my time in NIB was to see much more joint ventures between Nordic-Baltic companies, because I always thought that given the different backgrounds, there is a mutual benefit to work together and to sort of bring experience from different history together and manage. Now, I asked artificial intelligence how many joint ventures have we seen in the Nordic-Baltic region, and the list was short. And I think it is something also for the future to think about, that it's not anything that NIB is going to be able to impose. There must be a demand for it, and there must be a sort of a policy basis for it. But of course, I think it could be useful to support the process if it is to emerge at a larger scale than we have seen so far.
Johnny, you need a single capital market in the Nordics and Baltics, and this is, by the way, the idea from which NIB started long 50 years ago, probably. This can bring capital together, and this can enhance creation of any joint ventures between any actors. And I think public banks, multilateral banks, development institutions in the separate countries can do a lot, say in investing in equity, which could be a new area for NIB, because NIB is not yet active in that. And development banks still fear to start investing in equity. But investing in equity would stimulate also activity in the capital market. We have still a huge disparity between Swedish and Finnish capital market, which is deep and well functioning, and almost non-existent markets in 3 Baltic states. Of course, between 3 Baltic states, we put huge efforts to harmonize our legislation and to establish some institutions working across 3 Baltic countries, like acceleration funds, which could also be an object for help, for assistance, not free of charge, of course, for NIB. But I think here we have to do much more, and even sharing experience and somehow, well, exporting this financial knowledge from Nordic countries to the Baltic countries could be one of the ways forward. NIB can play a huge role as well here.
Yeah. Okay, one question to Keit-Pentus-Rosimannus. When you heard what Jonni Åkerholm was reflecting, that things that were fulfilled and which were not fulfilled, do you have any reflection on that? What were those expectations that actually didn't materialize?
That didn't materialize?
Did not materialize.
I do agree with what you said, that the lack, if I can say so, of the joint projects is something that that occurred to my mind if you ask about the examples. I think there are several reasons behind it, but for sure this is something that whether we think about the energy or even digital, I think the room to have more good examples in those sectors for sure is there.
Any further reflection?
No, I think that it is something, when I reflect further, it is then, of course, what you could do into the future. In this respect, I would tend to agree with you that there are perhaps sectors which one could develop. I have been reading your Andrei Kuzvek's paper noticed this paper on the present status and the new things that NIB is thinking about, and I have absolutely no problems with that. I think it's very much to the point. But in doing so, I also came to think about a few things which reflects a little bit what you were talking about. Because if we look at the present situation and a little bit into the future, we have a situation where we have a disrupted trade world, we have aging populations, and we have security challenges which are asking for a lot of resources. When we combine this, we know that there are going to be a lot of demand on resources and there are going to be disruptions on economic growth. So how do we combine this? How are we going to be able to live through this without having to reprioritize or give up some of the targets that we have in our economy and social economy? Now the answer is in fact growth. And the answer to growth is very much found in NIB priorities, that is productivity. We need to be able to enhance productivity growth in the region in the next few years in order to be able to produce the additional resources that all these challenges are going to put on us. Now, how do we get about getting more productivity? Well, even if at the time economic cooperation is facing headwinds in the world, we know that for countries in general and for the small countries in particular, we need economic cooperation in order to be able to build the new things, create the resources that we need. Now, we have also learned, though, that even if EU is the major platform for the NIB countries where we cooperate, and we know that it's going to remain so, but we have noticed in the last few years that the decision-making processes are very cumbersome in the EU area, and it is difficult for the EU area to move as fast as is needed when the world is changing. That, for me, gives something that you already hinted at a little bit, that in this respect, the Nordic-Baltic countries have a need to increase their own cooperation, not as in competition with the EU, but as a completion to what is happening in the EU countries. And I think that a more intense cooperation between the Nordic-Baltic countries would be important in order to be able to bring a more solid platform. You hinted already to some of the things, especially in the capital market things, that would be needed for this. I would also raise another thing that I think is important also from the part of the work of future NIB, is that even if Mr. Trump thinks that productivity is built on bricks and steel, that is not actually the fact anymore, and this particularly, it has not been the fact in the United States for a long time. In fact, the prosperity and the reason for the good performance of the American economy in the last decades in comparison with Europe in general is that the American economy has been able to create, expand a sector on the immaterial side where innovations have been used much more productively and increased prosperity much more rapidly than is the case of solely material production. And I think it is something that we also need in the Nordic-Baltic area to be able to put more emphasis, not forget about the material production, we need that, but we also need, in order to be able to raise prosperity at a more rapid pace, we need to be able to put more resources into turning our innovations, in which we are pretty good still, into more activity in immaterial production.
Yeah, I saw there was a hand. So how would you set the priorities for the Nordic-Baltic region, just following up what Jonni was saying?
That's a 2 minutes question, right? No, but just I had a short remark that while I understand the will to search for new priority areas, I always think that it's first important to make sure that whether we have taken out the maximum of the ones that we already have. While I now have the privilege to think and to analyze the situation from the EU level, being a member of the Court of Auditors, I do think that the Nordic-Baltic as well is so interconnected and so integrated with the whole EU that it's impossible to, or very hard to think that it can be developing in isolation or on its own. I think the overall success of the EU is what so much has an impact also whether this region will succeed or not succeed. And well, the security has been mentioned several times already here today as well. And I think that what is noticeable is that this is the region where there is no need to preach about the increased level of the defense. Here, it's not just that the understanding is here and present, but it's also that it's backed by the actions. The increase of the security and defense investment for sure has been there. And I am absolutely sure that the NIB's decision to extend the mission to these areas is for sure very welcomed by all the countries. And while I am currently not in the position to pick the political priorities, from the work that we have done now recently in the Court of Auditors, I would still bring out maybe two other topics besides the security and defense that I would say call for urgency. Overall competitiveness, maybe more precisely innovation and productivity, that was also mentioned earlier. It is no news that EU is aging, but it's also decreasing if you look at the proportion of the population. I was born in the second half of 70s, and at the time it was around 10% of the overall population that came from Europe, from the EU. For now, it's more around 5.5% of the overall population. And if we think what's the situation after the next 45 years, then actually it will be around 4% of the overall population, which simply means that we will have to do more with less. So the overall competitiveness and the innovation using the new technologies for sure is the key for this. And another topic that I would underline is in fact directly connected with both the competitiveness, the independence, autonomy, if you will, and also the security, and that is the energy. During the last couple of years, we have all witnessed a bit of political fireworks around the topic, and I think lately even the speculation whether the path that the EU has chosen will change or not. I will not go there. I always, in this similar situation, would simply like to look at the cold facts, if you may. And I think I would say that those trends that illustrate the situation and also a bit of the future is quite irreversible. According to the OECD, for example, the clean energy now attracts twice the investment of fossil fuels. Or International Renewable Agency, the latest overview shows that last year, 2024, the renewable power capacity increased more than 15%. And despite all the fueled rhetorics we also witnessed last year, 2024 actually marks the highest annual increase in the renewable generation capacity and the highest growth on record in percentage terms. International Energy Agency has reported recently that 80% of the growth of global electricity generation was provided last year by renewables or nuclear. Now, all that said, coming back to the work of the Court of Auditors, EU's Court of Auditors, we have very recently published an overview of electricity grids in the EU. And it is not a beautiful picture there. Already now, 40% or even a bit more than 40% of the EU grids are older than 40 years, which means that they have either already expanded or are about to expand the lifespan, expected lifespan. So it cries for the investment. I would even go maybe a bit more detailed. It does not only cry for expansion of the grids, but it demands on the smart investments. Again, knowing and using the flexibility measures, the ways of new technologies to keep the investment amount as low as possible, which still is a few trillion euros in the next upcoming decades. But still bringing the similar effect. So this is for sure another sector or field that is there to ask for investments and priority.
Yeah, thank you very much. I also heard an ex-Minister of Environment speaking. You talked quite much about the green transition. Maybe Minister Šadžius, how do these priorities sound to you?
They sound, I completely agree with Kate, who wanted to tell us that we need more of the same in the NIB activities. More of the same. In fact, this confirms that NIB goes the right way. An investment in energy, in green transition, on the other hand, in the innovation and growth of productivity. This is where we need to press on. And security, the third priority that appeared just now, well, security, you can consider this as an element of sustainability, of sustainable transition. But anyway, these are directions where we need to press on. And in some cases, there's infrastructure, like with energy, with electricity that Kate just quoted. I think in the Baltics, we still need to do quite a lot. We need at least the second line of electricity, the Harmony link with Poland, at least. I think in Estonia, you have also some needs to improve interconnection of your electricity systems with the surrounding world. we need transport infrastructure. Of course, we use different sources, like for Rail Baltic, there is European financing that we have to press on and to go fast forward. So infrastructure needs investment, and investment comes normally today with the loans from Nordic Investment Bank with repayment further from income from the commercial project. But we also need investment into something that creates something from nothing. And I mean intellectual capacity of the people. And I think probably we underestimate the importance of investment in refurbishing and restructuring of education systems. And adapting the structure of the workforce to the needs of the society. This is a very complicated task that itself needs some intellectual capacity to be applied. So this is the way where NIB also goes. So I think these are priorities that are on our agenda, and they will stay on our agenda since all these infrastructure projects normally are very long. This will stay for a longer time. I think more than a decade for looking forward. Well, you asked about 20 years. And Madam Grybauskaitė responded that she doesn't plan for that long. I think we should expect these priorities to sustain for two coming decades.
All right. Now, actually, there is a possibility, if there's anyone who could want to ask a question. I'm sure that the current president, Andrei Kysvek, he will reflect on this food for thought that he has heard. I noticed that there are many notes taken. So are there any question from the audience before the final roundup? There is one question at the back. If you could introduce yourself.
Yes, hello, my name is Nina Aikas from SEB. I had a question regarding the relative competitiveness of Europe versus US, and also you mentioned about the innovation. And one thing that has been now discussed a lot is that Europe has higher regulation. So in your opinion, what can the Baltic countries and perhaps also NIB affect it, or kind of what would be the actions taken that we would reduce the regulation in Europe in general and increase the productiveness of Europe?
Who would like to?
What would be the actions?
Yes, if there's any, like, if the Baltic as a region can contribute that, or in general, like, what's your view on that?
I think what the region is now currently contributing is that there is a group of, I think it translates as a Friends of Simplification, working with the Commission, current Commission, and this is exactly, and it's led by the region, by the Baltics. And this is exactly the task, and there will be plenty, and already has been presented several proposals of how to simplify, how to cut down the red tape. So I would say very simply, it just needs another push, and I think that this is what the region is well known for, that it's just that we recognize the need, but we are also willing to push further on the EU level. And I mean, I would have trouble in selecting one or two examples because there are, the need is horizontal, I would say. So there is very difficult to find one sector where we could say that it's no initiative needed there. Each and every sector, for sure, cries for the simplification needs as well.
You know, I would wish to answer very frankly. Cutting red tape was a jargon, one of the first jargons I had to learn many, many years ago in 2006, 2007, when I started my career at the European level, participating in the ECOFIN meetings. And it was always used by many people talking very seriously, with serious faces, and trying to even to imagine where we could find that red tape and these scissors that could cut it. You know, my feeling is that finally, now, thanks to the changes across Atlantic, we live in a moment when this can become real. Where from? Probably, I would guess, this is sustainability reporting that will fall first. Because there is already a legal proposal. In Europe, everybody likes euphemisms and jargonisms and very funny names. And there is omnibus proposal of many directives that this is omnibus, which is called Stop the Clock. Stop the Clock. And this is the first step to switch off the clock and stop applying non-financial reporting requirements with the aim to review them and to either abolish at all or simplify considerably. And I have a feeling, I might be wrong, but I have a feeling that now we will be successful at least in that. I would wish we would review our regulations further, just being pressed from across Atlantic. I think it is a very good crisis not to waste another Brussels euphemism. And I feel now much more optimistic than back then in 2007 or 2012.
Thank you. And now actually it's time to stop the clock also here. So the last question and a very brief answer. We start with Kate. What would be the headline that you would like to see about NIB in 20 years and why?
In 20 years? We presume that there still is a medium where we produce headlines, right? In 20 years?
Yes.
Okay, but in more serious note, I think in 20 years I would like to see a headline saying that NIB supported groundbreaking new energy project is launched in the newest EU member states, Ukraine. And why? Why?
Yeah.
Well, first, let's say what's the prerequisite of this is that Ukraine has won the war, which means that there has been enough support for Ukraine, also that the NIB has continued with the support that it's given, and that the NIB has stayed firm in supporting the new energy technology, and it has paid off for sure.
All right, the next headline.
My version of a headline, if of course, as Kate said, there will be some, but probably there will be. Financial Times rating, Nordic-Baltic economy among 10 strongest, Nordic Investment Bank among 10 largest multinational banks. Why? Because of our effort, enthusiasm, and success.
Great. And then the last heading for you.
NIB, a major contributor to intensified Nordic-Baltic cooperation.
All right, thank you very much. Yeah. And now we'll have a 20-minute break. Thank you.
Thank you.